o'clock. I declare the meeting open. For the town of Walkerville would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on today and respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We recognise the many generations of stewardship the Kaurna people have provided to this land and respect that their cultural heritage and beliefs are as important today as they were for their ancestors. Present, we have, not everyone present, we have apologies from Councillor Bishop, and we have a leave of absence, of course, from Councillor Coleman. Are there any leave of absence? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to enter or request a leave of absence from the 25th of March through the 20th of May, whilst I prepare and relocate to Perth and settle over there.
The 25th of March?
Yeah.
To the, what of May?
20th of May.
Thank you.
And that's just about time to work forward it. Review the budget.
Thank you. Would someone please, thank you, move it. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ashby. All those in favour? Thank you, Carrie. Good luck with moving.
Thank you.
Good luck with packing up, actually.
Nightmare so far. So.
Yes.
Yeah, lots to do.
Let's just say I don't envy you. Confirmation of minutes. That the minutes have been circulated to everybody. Would someone move that the minutes held on the 21st of February be confirmed as a true and accurate record? Councillor Wilkins, seconder. May I have a seconder? Councillor Fairland. All those in favour? Sorry. You're going to have to wave. So you know my peripheral vision is not good. I have to sit back a bit. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Declaration of interest. Are there any? Yes, Councillor Wilkins.
I'd like to declare a perceived conflict of interest in item 14.3.1. As I live in the area, I will stay in the room, debate and vote on the matter.
Thank you. No others? There are no deputations, representations or presentations. Mayor's diary. Does anyone have any, people have been circulated with it? Does anyone have any questions regarding the Mayor's diary? If not, would someone move that it be accepted? Councillor Wilkins? Councillor Ashby? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Are there any reports from elected members having attended training, conferences, seminars or external meetings?
Just in relation to East Waste.
That's the next one.
Oh, sorry.
These are non-council specific.
Oh, sorry.
That's what it says in brackets. If not, we move on to the reports from elected members having attended subsidiary board meetings. Councillor Ashby.
Yes, I apologise. There really is not a lot to report, except that, as you probably mostly know, the issues with East Waste and Jeffreys have been settled at nearly no cost to council, apart from our own internal stuff, but fortunately we were told by the insurance, and I haven't been privy to much of that discussion anyway. As a matter of course, we had to declare an interest and vacate the meeting. And the other one, probably, which is pretty obvious, is the budget. I mean, most things are going along pretty well, but obviously fuel costs are going to be probably quite exorbitant for this year and probably going into next year, so we'd have to be looking at extra provisions there, I think. And the CEO has been reappointed and his new contract, I think, has been settled. That was all. I assume that is out of confidence. The negotiations and all the contract details are, but he has been reappointed. And, I think it's a 4-year contract again.
I was about to say, do you know the term? 4 years.
So, yeah, and other than that, everything's going along pretty smoothly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Are there Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. Rob's comments then just reminded me of something, and I know that Carly had been putting some waste tips in the Walkerville News, and I'm not sure. There's one that I spoke to her about a while ago in particular. And I'm not sure if we've ever done it. I usually look for it, but I know
I
that.
don't think this is to do with subsidiary meetings.
No, but it is to do with his place.
I think maybe ask the question of other business, because that's not to do with attending a subsidiary meeting.
Okay.
Alright.
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes, sorry.
Keys and
Councillor
Health
Nicky.
Authority.
Yes.
Yep. So the minutes of the meeting are presented in the back of the report there at 16.4.1. Generally, it was, I suppose, a bit of policy updates, some minor wording, which would all go through. There was discussion around the annual business plan. Shaw Hammond moved a recommendation to I know there's a bit of a date change that'll be coming through soon. Probably the biggest note to really talk about really was just the Walkerville's position with EHA and continuing on, and there was discussion about where's it all sitting at the moment, because obviously they are supportive of maintaining Walkerville, and I have sent an email to acting CEO, and I saw that response just before, so thank you for that. But yeah, we are the email. I just followed up on the other business that how is everything progressing, because Miller Olsen did send a letter to all the subsidiary members asking their position. Everyone's responded. Everybody's in favour. Every other council was in favour of maintaining Walkerville. So now it's just the process now, leaving it with administration to follow up with EHA and formalising the acceptance of Walkerville.
Your Worship, that's correct. So we received notification on Friday that all constituent councils are
Yeah, they
supportive
were
of
waiting
it.
on one.
So now we're just going through the final process, seeking a little bit of further advice, just exactly what the process will be, and we should be ready to go for the April meeting.
Thank you.
Yep, that's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Thank you, Councillor Nicky. Questions from the gallery?
Your Worship, at 5 p.m. today there were no questions from the gallery.
Okay, questions without notice? If not, questions with notice, we have none. And no petitions, and there any motions without notice? No? And there are no motions with notice. I would like to bring forward item 19.1 so that our consultant doesn't have to wait till later to discuss the Town of Walkerville CEO Pulse performance review. With your agreement, would somebody move that we move into confidence? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. May I have a seconder? Councillor Fernand. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move
We have a motion to bring it forward first, and then we have another motion to
My apologies. We've gone into confidence, or we have gone into confidence. Would someone move that we move the agenda item forward from 19.1 to now? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ashby. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. back again. Thank you very much, everyone. We've now moved out of confidence and back into the ordinary meeting. Reports requiring decision of council. 14.2.1, the draft parking policy. No problem saying that. And Josh, everyone has received the papers. Does anyone wish clarification regarding the draft parking policy? Councillor Wilkins.
Can Josh just take us through, I guess, summarise the changes made?
Yeah, look, through the chair. The major change was we've omitted the parking, the voucher booklet. Like, a lot of the feedback was that it wasn't necessary, or they felt that the cost was too much. So we've omitted that, and what we may do as part of the public consultation process is we might look at asking a question about whether there is an appetite there. The other major one that we've made is rather than having the fixed and the transferable permit, we've just converted it to a parking permit. We get numerous complaints on a daily basis about residents or properties that have got more cars than permits and having to move cars around because the fixed permit has to be with a particular car, and also from an administrative perspective, trying to get people's rego, car registrations, going back and forth trying to get that information before we can issue the permit is quite tedious. So criteria doesn't change in terms of allowances and doing that initial assessment. It's just that we'll just give them, and it's up to the homeowner to how they use those permits.
Thanks.
Any further questions? I have to say I was the person that suggested we ask the question about the vouchers, but what I suggested, rather than charging money for the first lot, that they're given one if they ask for it, like vouchers for 10. So if they have people over and they want to stay a bit longer, but then if they want another book, then they have to pay, and not maybe $50, maybe 10, just whatever it costs to print it. But in the first instance, just give them a book. That may satisfy them. And then only allocate them like once a quarter. Otherwise they could be providing car parking for whomever. I'm not saying they would do it, but I think it may be just an act of good grace if we do that. If we ask the question, there may not be an appetite for it.
That's a good suggestion.
Any other questions? If not, is someone happy then to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Thank you, Councillor Joshi, for that. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you, Josh. We now move on to the Suburban Boundary Realignment Renaming Update Report. Are there any questions regarding this report? Yes, Councillor Joshi.
I was reading through the report and through the survey, and I was just wondering, in regards to the attachment B, the question that we have from the Attorney General's Department, the letter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
As to what is meant to happen, because we've already spent about 10,000 or so on the consultation, and
Through you, Wash, we haven't spent a significant amount of money on the consultation at all, did we, the previous round, Sarah?
That's correct. It was only the analysis from Action Market Research.
okay.
So it was nowhere near the $10,000. The proposed $10,000 is what. So originally in the discussions with the Surveyor General, the amount that they estimated could be anywhere up to about $30,000 for the entirety of the consultation process. That's been refined, and they're suggesting anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 would be council's contribution because of the size of the township, and then the other $6,000 is $6,500 is what's proposed if we engage AMR to do the consultation process for us.
Okay, and that is again with another consultation process and with the questions that they raised.
It's just the
With
one
cost
question.
factor. Yeah,
Mm.
with the cost factor.
In that recommendation, if I may just point out, it does say in point 3 that once it's ready to go, that it comes back to council. Now, it doesn't have to come back, but the option is there if someone thinks we should. Alright, if once it's all worked out on how we're going to go out with the questionnaire for public consultation, the point 3 says it can then come back for approval by council. Now I think if we've agreed, they're going to be do you tick the box for yes or you tick the box for no? It's only going to delay, and we're getting closer and closer to, I say whatchamacallit? Caretaker, thank you. Just never remember that word. It just worries me we're delaying it further by having that. Anyway, that's, yes. Sorry, Councillor Ashby, did you have a question? No. Councillor Williams, then Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor Frick. I actually think the recommendation better reflects the initial intention of council, and so I would be quite happy to move points 1, 2 and 3.
You want it to come back to here before it goes out?
Well, once again, conscious of time. However, I think in a lot of cases, sometimes the answers you can get are very reliant upon the question that you ask.
Well, they're going to experts to do it, aren't they? Anyway.
Experts that did it last time, I do it again.
No, they didn't do the question though.
Well, I've seen experts perform public consultation that isn't necessarily reflective.
It was just a thought, just to speed it up a bit. Councillor Wilkins.
So just to clarify, has Councillor Williams moved that?
Yeah, I'm happy to move all 3.
So with your, I guess, blessing, one of the things that I think there was a lot of confusion about when we first went out was the history of the area, and also I think what Councillor Nenke had previously talked about, school zoning as well. So with Councillor Williams' permission, I'd like to amend, I'm not sure where to put it, but I'd like that when we do go back out, that we include a one-page historical summary of the area, and also any information we've got on school boundary alignments, whether it changes, whether it stays the same. I think it just puts it there in black and white. There's no ambiguity in that space. With those inclusions, I'm happy to
It has nothing to do with schools.
No, that's right. But I think just to clarify, we said there literally in black and white, this will have no effect on the current arrangement for school zoning.
Yep. Do you wish clarification? Or because we've got an amendment up there yet? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Sorry. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, look, the only thing that I was going to say to Councillor Wilkins on that is including the half-page historic summary. Obviously, given point 3, that would come back to that point 4. The intention is that comes back as well as part of point 3.
Through your worship, Councillor Williams, that's spot on. That's what I had intended. So we would consult with AMR to establish the questions, the methodology of the consultation process and how they plan to attack it, and then effectively a package would come back into the chamber before it would be released.
Prior to signing.
Yes.
And now we've moved it into that point 3. Councillor Nikki, you had a question?
Did you want to?
Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I was actually looking for some clarity about in the correspondence received back from the Attorney General.
Surveyor General.
Surveyor General, sorry. It is advised that any boundary realignment or renaming must have the full support of council. Does this mean unanimous? Therefore, we could not take 3 out.
That is as far as this council is concerned, as far as the decision making process, as I understand it, is the majority for the decision.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I read that as unanimous. The way it was worded, I don't know if we need to get some clarification around that right back and just ask.
We don't have a Surveyor General there at the moment.
No, not at the moment.
No, but whoever wrote that, there must be a general policy on that.
So don't they put a percentage?
But Your Worship, between 75% and 80% is what the majority, significant majority is of the community, and then it comes in for the majority decision of council before it proceeds.
So if I could just speak
Yes.
to this. Look, and I'm sorry to do this, but I'm still not overly in favour of even going. I mean, I'm looking at the results from the first survey, and I know that was all muddled with 4 options. But when you look at the last survey, the weighted results were just 51% for all options in favour, which did not account for a number of surveys which were discarded where there isn't only ticked the first question and didn't continue on, where they said no, but then didn't answer the rest of it. And that was clarified at the time. That would have swung it around probably 50-50. And then not only is the weighted score of 51% a lot lower than the required 75 to 80% mark, but it's also likely to be even lower once the area's outside of the area, like they have a part of Vale Park, won't be included in the suburb name. I know for sure that a lot of people that I know live there found it humorous, and they were all like, yep, you beauty, I want to live in Walkerville. But now that they don't have the opportunity, they'll probably be voting against it.
We don't know, do we?
No, you don't know, but from my discussions. So I think, in my mind, we actually have an answer. So I'm not really that keen. After everything we've been through in Budget Review 1, we're looking at now going another $6,500 for the survey, another $10,000 for the value of general. I mean, $16,500. Well, it'll only be $6,500 depending on the results to start with. I respect that. But it's going to have to be a significant amount. We have to be able. I think it's going to be probably 80% for them to look at this. And that's pretty much where I'm at. So at the moment, I'm looking at what I believe will probably be the outcome, and whether we want to throw on more money at this. So I'm speaking against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone wish to speak for?
I am of exactly the same opinion. In fact, I was thinking about moving point 4 and that we abandon it. I don't think it's a worthwhile use of council resources. We've spent a lot of time and effort onto it. There's only about 50% of the responses have come back that have favoured the option that we're going out with again. We're being asked by the Valuer General that he would want at least 75% to 80%. I'd guarantee that if you went to the rest of the council areas and asked them the question, you wouldn't get within a bull's roar of every bit of feedback I've had has been opposed to it. And that and the extra cost that we're likely to incur, I think it's just a waste of ratepayers' money and time and effort on the council's behalf, and I'm very, very much against it.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you speak for?
I just think, yeah, we should speak for it. I think we need to finish this. It doesn't go at least more than 3 days when someone asks me, both for and against, what is happening, what's happening, why haven't we heard anything? Look, this will just close it down. It is a simple question. We'll get to see what the question is, make sure that it's very clear, and I think we're well ahead in terms of our budgeting constraints this year, in terms of we're in the positive based on the financials I saw. So I think $6,000 is probably just to shut it down once and for all, which way we want to go, and just close it off. So I'm absolutely for it, because I think we just need to ask that simple question, close it out, because I don't think the last one really did that. Just left the door ajar completely.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Do you wish to speak as the last speaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Fricker. And very similar to what Councillor Wilkins has just said, it feels like if we're talking percentages, it feels like we're 80% through doing this particular process. If we abandon it now, you don't really have the opportunity to put it to bed. Personally, I don't have a problem if it gets rejected by the community. Likewise, I don't have a problem if it gets accepted by the community, but we're that close to finishing it, I think I'm just supportive of completing the process.
Thank you. I'll put it to the vote, and this is what's been moved. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, with the inclusion of the request of the historic summary in the school zone clarification. been moved and seconded, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Thank you.
I'd like to look at the division on that.
You may. Would everyone who voted for stand, please? It's Councillor Joshi, Councillor Williams, Councillor Wilkins, Councillor Furlan. Thank you. And against? Councillor Ashby and Councillor Menke. Thank you. We now move on to 14.3.2, the Library Board nomination of Hedy Hashimi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? If not, is someone happy to move it? You have a question, Councillor
No,
Joshua?
I'm happy to move it. I think
Thank
she's
you.
really good.
Yes. You're seconding, Councillor Furlan?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favour then? Thank you. Unanimous. I'd like that noted so she's aware of our support. Thank you. I think she'd do an exceptional job.
Yes.
We move on to 14.4, subsidiaries. 14.4.1, the Era Water Draft Strategic Plan.
Your Worship, I think you missed one. 14.3.3, the review of the local government elected member allowances.
My apologies, but it's not on my cheat sheet. 14, that's why I did, but anyway, that's my apologies everyone. 14.3.3, which is the 2022 review of local government elected member allowances. Are there any questions regarding this paper?
No.
It's just CPI.
Mm.
If not, would someone move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Joshi, and a seconder is Councillor Wilkins. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Could someone turn the air conditioning on, please?
Sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
Just a general question
Yep.
about that. It's a little bit outside of this scope, but while I was at Campbelltown, I remember twice within the 4 years they actually had a review by one of the electoral bodies about how they broke up the wards and also the delegations of voting for the mayor. And I'm not trying to upset anything, but they were doing it every 2 years, and we've never even reviewed the process. I know we don't. Yeah, but that was the thing. They came in, they had area councils, and they went to wards, but they review it constantly every 2 years whether the elected members are still happy, and also how the vote within the room works with the mayor as well. So I was just curious, why one council would be doing it every 2 years and we haven't even looked at it whilst I was here. So, and I forgot all about it. It's only when I read this report that I thought it was just a bit weird that...
We can inquire.
Yeah,
We can
it's
tell
under,
what they do.
I assumed it was under the Act, so I was just wondering...
No, I don't think it is.
Your Worship,
We do have to review. We are asked by the, and I'm going to say it's the Electoral Commission, but we have a boundary review.
That's right.
And we also how many elected members we have.
Yes.
And we have to do that.
Yeah.
And have we done it this term?
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years we've done it.
Did we do that, did we?
Yes, in the first year of.
Did we? 4, 3.
And we review ourselves to see if we can reduce us down or we need to increase or whatever. And at the last review we decided to stay as is.
Yeah,
yes, and that's an every 4 year. And that is legislated.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's exactly what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
well,
so
we do
I forgot that I did do
Yeah,
it. So
no, we did do
it.
it.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I find, and we have to do it a certain way. So we have to engage in a consultant.
Yes, there was. Yeah.
And it ends up costing a lot of money.
Sorry, just to add to that, Mayor, the previous one we did actually decrease by one.
Before my
we decreased by one elected member.
Okay.
It's a very interesting process, particularly when you look at the numbers. You're not meant to be overrepresented or underrepresented, and when you look at the numbers, you can see simply because of the size of our council that probably in comparison to other councils we're overrepresented. But if we weren't, you'd only have 2 councillors.
That's correct.
So it'd be very, very busy. I now move back to 14.4.1, which is the Era Water Draft Strategic Plan for 2022 and 2025. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the strategic plan? Councillor Furlan.
At the presentation that the Era management presented, they had a couple of couple of areas that they were going to target, and I just thought maybe it might be worth us highlighting that they do focus on those.
Yes, by all means.
So one of them was there to shoot to merge with other schemes. So I think we need to make sure that's sitting high on the radar screen. The other was the novel idea of selling their depreciation and where that's at. And the other one was their engagement with government grants. They had a couple of suggestions of what they were doing. So, I mean, I personally would like to see those things front and centre, and for them to report back
on a regular
basis on where they're at with those.
Absolutely.
If
Can you
that's
put that
okay.
in with regular updates? I've amended the motion. If you have a look and see, is this what you're happy with? Is everyone else happy with it?
Yeah, options of merging with other schemes. Engagement or sourcing government grants, maybe that might be the better word. Yep, that's it.
Because it's the federal farm grant, federal farm
Grant.
off-farm or something farm grant. I think Councillor Wilkins had your hand up before Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Forget that. But mine's sorry, give this off. And I was reading through it. I was really going, well, what's the purpose of this? And I'm like, yeah, you know, they tick the boxes. We want to be technology savvy. We want to run a good water scheme. They get financially self-sufficient as far as possible. I'm a bit like, that's a bit weak in my mind. I would like them to say we will be financially self-sufficient, rather than our purpose as far as possible. I mean, that's a bit wishy-washy if you ask me. But I mean, that was the only comment I really had on it. I think Councillor Furlong's picked up a couple of other things there, but I was thinking along the same lines.
I'm just trying to find the point. It's in our purpose, isn't it, from memory?
Yeah, that's right. It's the last one, so it's 1.8.15. So it's not even the top one.
So we actually, and it should be. I probably should be 1.82.
Yep.
And it would be to be financially self-sufficient. Full stop.
Yeah.
We don't need as far as possible. Wiggle room there.
Well, you could go one step further than that and say return to councils, because that was actually the original idea way back then, that it was going to generate income for the councils, and as we've seen, that hasn't been.
That's where my mind flew to start with. Williams. I've got baby steps.
Yeah.
Before we go, Councillor Williams is the next who had a query.
Thanks, and yes, fair enough to Councillor Williams' points. But I'm really glad that Councillor Furlan brought up the two dash points, the first and the third one in particular. They're almost hand in hand in that we saw that report that I said that I forwarded to the Mayor that I think she sent around to everyone, that showed that obviously the state or the governments are looking at this, and so many different schemes that there are around the place. You would think if everyone's trying to employ someone that sells water and everyone's trying to employ the technical people, that if some of them merge, you have an opportunity to do that a little better rather than piecemeal, and obviously a greater opportunity then to, as the third point says, source government grants. So I can see, you know, if you could stare into a crystal ball, I can see that starting to occur with more of the more smaller schemes, not only throughout metropolitan South Australia, but throughout Australia, starting to occur.
We have met with Steve Georgianis, the federal member of Adelaide, just in answer to that, and he's will assist trying for us to try and get funding. I met with him and the chair and Councillor Bishop. I was asked because to attend because I've discussed it with him before, and he's very keen to try and assist us in trying to get a group together so that we can look at some form of amalgamation to make economies of scale.
Yeah.
No, he was very positive. So it's not going to happen overnight, but he's certainly going to be behind it, which is, I think, a good outcome.
Oh, that's good, thanks.
Councillor Furlong.
There was probably one other thing that may be worth putting down is the conversation around water trading schemes.
Mm.
Now I know that's outside of their level of control, but whether they can actively facilitate
yeah.
conversations and move through that and report back where that's at. And I do like Councillor Williams' comment about the profitability. If that was the original basis for it, then likewise.
It was to waterproof our area first and foremost,
But there was
and then there was a glimmer of hope of bringing in money.
But if the glimmer of hope was documented that it needed to be a profitable scheme, if that is what it was originally stated as, then I do believe in that objective of possibly profitable or possibly sustainable, I think could reflect what was the original aim of it, if that is correct.
Just to respond to that, sorry, Mayor, one of the difficulties that occurred, obviously that wasn't anticipated at the time, was SA Water being able to reduce the price of their water. So that's something that also created difficulties. So.
Okay, right. Well, this is the. Does anyone else wish to speak to the paper? If not, these are our comments that to go back to the board of Era Water. Everyone happy with the?
Thanks.
Sorry, I didn't see she was trying to find a word there. I was up the top reading it. So is everyone happy with the inclusion, which is what we've done to point 2? If so, would someone move? Councillor Furlong, may I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkins. I'll put it to the vote then if everyone's read it. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. We now move on to Era Water Budget Review 2. I'm assuming everyone's read the paper. Are there any questions regarding it?
I've got a question mark on one side. I can't remember what it was. I didn't know.
Haven't got it on your notes?
No.
If not, would someone then move it? Move the recommendation. Councillor Furlong, Councillor Wilkins, all those in favour? Thank you, carried. Thank you, Vicky. We now move on to identification of items for individual consideration. And they are 16.3.1, which is the monthly works report. 16.3.2, the monthly financial report. 16.3.3, the decisions of council assessment panel. Thank you. 16.3.4, the Walkerville Oval Committee minutes. 16.3.5, the Women of Walkerville Committee minutes. Subsidiaries, EHA board minutes. And the outstanding council resolutions and actions. Right, would someone move that we receive and note the all the reports that have been listed? Councillor Ashby, may I have a seconder? Councillor Furlong, all those in favour? Thank you, carried. So we go back to 16.3.3, the decision of council assessment panel. Councillor Furlong, you wish to speak?
Yeah, look, this is more just of a comment and just sort of maybe to enlighten the other elected members. And it's just around the concern of loss of our old style homes, and I don't use the word heritage because the bar now to the heritage list of home is so high that I even used an example of the Leaning Tower of Pisa at the last council assessment panel. Had the Leaning Tower of Pisa was submitted under the current planning guides with an application to restore it, it would have been rejected and demolished, and they would have put up a water tower like out at Norwood. And I can,
I was there when you mentioned it, and it's so true.
And I do believe that that would have been the case, because administration do a great job working with the new planning guidelines, which are very focused on removing any control of the council decisions around building and construction. So they have to walk a very fine line. Then it goes to the council assessment panel, which has 5 members, of which only 1 is an elected member. So you have 4 other panel members which have no, for a better word, no skin in the game. They are not elected by the local members, and hence the decisions that are made fall back onto the council. Why was this decision made? When in fact you're following a set of guidelines that may appear very objective, but there is a great deal of subjectivity to it. Terms like overall or reasonable are used, and it depends how you want to interpret those things. And my concern is there are a lot of old style homes that are being demolished because of the land size. You see a lot of homes that are modern, relatively modern, maybe 60s or 70s, that are demolished and are a newer home. That's great. It's a like for like or an improvement. But it sort of rings a bell. I say, just look at St. Peter's. They are able to maintain, and I might be wrong, and someone can correct me, they do maintain a lot of their older style homes. So what is the difference? What is there lessons learned that we can pick up that they can retain it, even with the new guidelines? Whereas we are finding a lot of these older style homes are being carved up, demolished and carved up. It's really just a comment, and it's a concern. It's a trend across all councils, but I just think, you know, we should be aware that we are trying to row a boat with no arms. And, you know, I can use that example of the Leaning Tower Piers. I've got to pick the Colosseum, could have picked any of them, but it really
It's an engineering disaster.
yeah, I know, exactly. But it sounds like an engineer is talking, and that was part of the problem. The emphasis is too much on some very narrow guidelines, and all you have to do is pick one, and you just make your point on that, and then get across the line. It's never a holistic approach, and
No,
that.
May I suggest that we actually ask Josh to speak to his equivalents at the other. So
Yeah.
the era, because
Yeah.
that's the era group of councils have the beautiful old homes that are being knocked over and being replaced by 3 townhouses. On whether, you know, if any of them are having any success and how they're doing it.
The approach.
However, we do have a new government. It's been formed. That is, if you remember, era mayors met with both Liberal and Labor ministers, and that was one of our concerns under the planning code, of the fact that trees and getting rid of some of the old homes. And so both were made aware of it, but Labor did say, the Labor Shadow Minister, Andrea Michaels, did say they were certainly looking at it and would be looking at the planning code.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's going to improve overnight, but I hope that our trees are somewhat saved and we don't lose our homes. Councillor Nenke.
I'd like to thank Stephen for bringing that up, because I mean I've always found this with, I mean, design codes something new again, but I feel like CAPs and the DAPs before that have always been very pro-development anyway. The development plans that existed prior, it's always been subject to interpretation. I think you could equally argue, if you've got the right members on the panel, you could equally argue a different case to support or to go against a proposed development and support someone who's objected, for example. But it's
well, the people that we have appointed are experts in their field.
Yeah, that's the thing though, but they are experts, and this is not just this council, it's every council. They're engineers, they're architects, there's planner, but generally, I don't know how you could improve the system, and maybe that's a discussion that needs to be had at local government level, because I always found that when I did sit on the CAP as well, that the people who objected, who'd been living in the area for 20 years and had made a family home, someone comes and buys a house next door, they want to develop it, they're going to demolish it, put in 3 or do something unusual to the boundary, sell it and move. There was no protection for our ratepayers actually live there for an extended period of time, and they're going to continue to live here for another 10, 20 years as well.
It's the legislation that needs to be, it's the legislation that allows for
I think it's still subject to interpretation, and it's having the courage to actually be willing to allow the next step in the process. If someone wants to actually take it to the ERD court or whatever, but I always find that, I mean, I don't know what Councillor Furlan's feelings are towards that, but I'm probably a little bit, as a resident here, I'm again looking to protect and hone in on the needs of the people that do live here, and I think again it's subject to interpretation. The principles of development control are there, and it's how you want to interpret it. So,
as I said, if we could get Josh to speak to the people, and also we need to push it with the changes in the planning and design code.
Sorry.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Comment?
It's something that I think I raised before that Councillor Fairlands was the difference between Walkerville and St Peters. And is there any reason why St Peters seem to have been able to do it and we haven't?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We
Yeah.
need to talk to.
Yeah, I can certainly ask it amongst the area councils. I will say one point that, and it was before my time as my predecessor, but there was the heritage overlay conversation where residents were given the opportunity as to whether properties were transferred over, and we allowed them to have that choice. So that, in some capacities, probably will go some way to affecting the houses like Councillor Furlan was referring to as well.
Okay. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I would, and you just mentioned the tree issue, and I'm not sure, I can't remember where I read this recently, and it does tie in obviously with developments as well, about there were 2 suburbs mentioned in this report. One of them was Vale Park, about losing 10% of its tree canopy, and I remember a few years ago we had a report on the tree canopies that we had and the targets and everything, the urban forest strategy, I guess it probably falls under. It might be worth having a look at that again at some stage if we then have the opportunity. That might support you, Josh, in your discussions with the other area councils. If you can illustrate
there is
the
heat
loss.
mapping being done.
Yeah.
To do all mapping trees.
Yeah.
It's sort of happening or about to happen.
Yeah.
They want to do it all on one point.
Yeah, like we read a report like that and you think, well, that's a report that comes out, but I'd rather have our own analysis on something like that because it's just in the media, but there must be a significant enough loss given that we're meant to increase by 1% each year for the next 20 years. If you're losing 10% there, well, we're behind the 8 ball.
Through the chair, members may recall at that time that we highlighted the enormity of trying to not only achieve what we'd set out to achieve in the strategy, but also what the 30-year plan of Adelaide had said for urban infill and population growth, but then tree canopy growth as well. And Vale Park is a perfect example where subdivisions, houses being knocked over, 1 into 2, 1 into 3, trees being removed for driveways, no retention of trees on private land. So, and now, that study that's come out, and Ben might be able to confirm, but I think that the heat mapping from that news article was done by Nearmaps or by a
ULAD,
yeah,
something
yeah.
like
So
that.
Something like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
To do it is very expensive.
Yeah.
That's why we have to rely on others.
Well, we also had showing the breakdown through the different suburbs of what sort of
Because the Dindy is quite low
canopy that we
as
had.
of pools and tennis courts.
Yeah, and the difficulty for us too was that we only had, you want to increase by 20%, but we only had about 8%.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually planted, so that's why I've banged on so many times about every time I've got an opportunity to whack a tree.
Okay.
Just one quick comment, just following on Councillor Williams, and it was the planning department, which do a great job here. They raised the concern about the trees. The councils are obliged to hit a certain level with tree canopies. The planning guidelines are about half of that. So they will let you you're forced to approve something at this level with reduced vegetation, but yet on the other hand, and they're aware of it, and they've commented and they say, oh, well,
I did write to David Spears about that matter, if you remember, about 6 months ago.
And they'll just, as they do, they'll
Because it's almost in conflict.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you're spot on.
Are you happy to move the motion that we receive and note the decisions? Yes, Councillor Fowler?
Yes.
Now have a seconder. Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Now we have another point, which was 16.3.4, Walkerville Redevelopment Committee meeting minutes. Councillor Menke, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I was just looking at who was present, having Councillor Williams, yourself, Mayor, Councillor Williams, Councillor Bishop, Councillor Ashby, Councillor Ferland, and when it was, which one was it? Okay, when Councillor Williams called a division, I was just interested because it was only Councillor Bishop, Ashby, and Councillor Williams that was counted.
Yes.
So it's only the 3 vote.
Yes.
So
it should
the
be
proxy,
4. Should be there was only 3. Sorry, only
Councillor
3.
Furlong was there, but he didn't vote, and I was just.
But he wasn't an appointed proxy. That's something we're about to review between now and the next meeting. And because with Councillor Coleman being ill, and we have Councillor Wilkins with a leave of absence, we're going to expose ourselves to being a bit short. So on a couple of committees. So we are administration is reviewing that, and we'll be bringing it forward to the next council meeting to see, for example, with EHA, to appoint proxies to fill and actually be an official person at that meeting.
Okay.
Your Worship, Councillor Menke, just further to that, we had quorum for the voting rights, and the appointed committee members are those 3 there, which is why there was no need to appoint a proxy to further voting.
Okay. Yeah, I was just interested because I always thought it would have been good to have 4, and then it would the final vote would go to the chair or the mayor.
But given that there was an odd number of appointed members, there was no. There was no need to appoint a proxy for the meeting.
Okay.
Would you care to move?
Sorry, can I just ask one more question with this? So the decision that was made at this meeting, I know you said there's another meeting coming up with the committee.
Yes.
This decision was to approve the plans for progression, but there has been more
because
amendments.
Correct, yes. Which will be presented to the committee at their meeting on Thursday, and then presented to council, full council, at the special meeting on Monday.
And what will our decision?
The plans will be seen before, we will get the plans by Friday.
So the question to council will be, or the recommendation?
Fully endorse and freeze the existing plans for the further progression of the project.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Would you move?
Yes.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor?
Yeah, I'll see.
Oh, did anyone have a question?
Councillor
Did you have a
Furlong.
question?
I'll ask a question on that.
Do you wish to ask a question?
Well, you just put, I should know probably, but our timeline, we're sort of talking about starting in May, but we haven't even got out of tender yet, have we?
Through you, Your Worship, you are exactly right, Councillor Ashby. We are about 1 month behind the timeline because of the numerous changes that have been made and the debates over the concepts themselves. We are scheduled to kick the dirt on 1 May, but we will be doing some site preliminary works, which will be implementation of ADCO huts, fencings, cutting off of services, which constitutes our obligations under the deed. So tender process has been obviously delayed as a result of changes to the design, but the documentation is all but complete, and we're about to go out within the next week or so.
We haven't actually, the architect's spoken to potential builders and things like that.
It would be a bit of a conflict to speak to potential builders, but we'll go through a process of likely targeting a select tender process, of likely targeting about 15 builders, and then going through a process, shortlisting, and then going through a full tender process.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. I saw the agenda for Thursday came out this afternoon, but there weren't actual plans or revised plans attached. Will we get them prior to the meeting and print out, or are we intending on just looking at them at the meeting?
So through your worship, I received them late this afternoon, which is why they weren't attached, or they will be sent out first thing tomorrow morning.
No worries, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Neat, you've moved. Would you like to second? Councillor Ashby? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. urgent other business. There's no correspondence. Urgent other business. You wanted to.
Thank you, Mayor Frigga. It's not specifically urgent, I guess, but there were two parts to it. I think one of them we've just covered off because
Exactly
I spoke
right,
to
yes.
Scott during the week about, because SPDPC was the same, we had to, with council was going to be away that, so we're going to have to make sure we've got proxy members tidied up for quite a number of committees, quite possibly for, although there might be a lot of committees meetings left.
Well, we still have to be
for,
prepared.
Wesley Cemetery as well. But the one I started on before that I was going to bring up about East Waste was just an idea, given that we were talking about the cost of petrol and the amount of times. I know we went through this exercise a little while ago about how Walkerville is actually charged by East Waste, and if my memory serves me correctly, we established that it was by time that the trucks are actually in the council area. There's probably other ways that it's measured as well, not only by time but also there's obviously dumping fees and tonnage that you pay. I don't think this ever happened, if it has, please correct me. We only, as I probably mentioned before, we only put our general waste bin out once. So at the moment I think I'm on about a 9-month run or something of not putting it out. I've got friends that only put it out every year or not even that. If there was something we could do, as Carly had been doing some of those waste tests, to only put bins out when they're full, because that could significantly reduce the amount of time that trucks are actually within the council area. So one of those waste tips could be only put your bin out when it's full. It could also assist people with, I think, I want to see how long we can go to perhaps start to take more notice of throwing their food in the green bin as well, because we know that when the audit was done, it was 25 or 26% or something. Food waste that was still going in the general bin. So if we could do something that advertises that, only put your bin out when it's full, it might get people in the habit of putting it out less frequently, and if it cuts down the length of time trucks are in the area, it can save us some dough as well.
Perhaps we could include that in a weekly roundup.
I'd like to have a word of warning on that one. The only thing is, the more you try and cut down on your waste bin, the more likelihood you've got of contaminating your recyclable waste, and that's the biggest cost, is contamination and recyclable waste. So if you go out there and say put less in your blue bin, you've got to put it somewhere, and you'll find that people will not be all that careful in the way they sort it. Any black coloured stuff should go in your waste bin, shouldn't go in your recycling bin, because the machinery doesn't cope with it. And so my advice in waste is always, if you're in doubt, throw it out. And
well, may I suggest perhaps administration contact East Waste and get maybe something that we can put in once a month or something like that through.
I'm not saying don't put it out, as it says up there. I'm saying only put it out when it's full.
Yeah, well, that's.
Anyway, we'll look at it for we'll look at it and promote the best way of handling your waste. Thank you, Councillor Williams. We now move into confidential items. Would someone move that we go into confidence, please? Councillor Joshi, seconder. Councillor Wilkins, all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Right, we have now
come
come up to our next item, which is 19.3. Again, another confidential item, and it's been decided, given the it's to do with commercial in confidence, that we must have it in confidence. So would someone move that we go into confidence, please? Councillor Fairland, seconder Councillor Menke. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Right, we move into confidence again.
Back. Just go back.
Yeah, no, that's
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming back. I'm pleased to say that we've agreed on that item, and it now declares that the meeting closes at 23 past 8. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. I said it,